Hey, what's up everybody? It's 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘮𝘭𝘮. I'm back again doing the second video for today. You guys are going to get a lot of content out of me today. I'm going to be on Celtic Cat live streaming in a couple hours with Hudson Black. Doing a little philosophagging, we'll see how it goes. I don't know. But I just had a little conversation that I thought illuminated certain things about the boomers. Give me a little sneak peek into the mind of the boomers, deep into the psyche of the 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘮𝘭𝘮𝘦. So, basically, to get straight to the chase, it was a relative of mine's birthday, and we had gone to get a cake. We went and bought a cake, brought it home. We were all slopping it up. I've been doing this alternate day fasting for the last week and a half. It's starting to get easy mode. I won't go into that too much. It's probably warrant a video of its own. But I only eat every second day. And it was tough for the first couple of days. But like it always is with keto, you get better at producing ketones. You get better at converting like fat stores for energy. And that ketones suppress your hunger cravings. So you get to this point where you're like escape velocity and, it's no longer difficult to fast for extended periods of time, but you have to work up to that. And I'm finally there. But I decided to regress a little bit. There was some cake there and I ate like a big fucking piece of it. I ate like a quarter of it, right? And we're all sitting around and talking, and the baby's there, right? My baby. And my mother remarks to it. She says, "Oh, when you're on your birthday, your first birthday, you'll get a piece of cake too." And it kind of took me back for a second. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, can a 1-year-old eat a piece of cake? I didn't even think that was a thing. Like, I almost would think that that's kind of like poison to them, or that it's not going to result in anything good, right? I'd never considered the possibility before, but something just intuitively seemed like incorrect about it, And so I was like, I don't think that's going to be happening. Like, I just don't really think I like the sounds of that. And then, my girlfriend and my mother and my father too, they all started kind of gaslighting me and dogpiling on me. They were like, "Oh, it's a piece of cake. Don't be a party pooper." And I'm like, I'm not anti-fun, but I don't want to feed like a 1-year-old cake. Like, that just sounds ridiculous and stupid and like totally irresponsible to me. And I don't really appreciate that you guys are like gaslighting me into thinking I'm some kind of like killjoy for saying I don't want to feed poison to an infant baby that I worked. That, like, if you guys have been subscribed to my channel for any length of time, I put up with a lot of fucking bullshit to get that, you know what I mean? Like, that is the reward for me putting out like fucking 7 years of just total abuse and fucking agony and torment at the hands of an abusive, mentally ill woman. And anyway, that's not the point of this video. So my mother, she was being incessant about it. I first sort of like, I just kind of brushed it off without saying much. Like, the first like 3 or 4 times, I just kind of said no, like, I don't think that's happening. And then I was like content to just move on and leave it at that. And they were like, "Oh, come on, you gotta." And then on the, 4th or 5th time, my mother gave me like she got stern with me. And she's like, "You gotta have fun in life. You can't be perfect, blah, blah, blah." And I said something mean to her. I said something very mean to her that I didn't want to say. But once I said it, I didn't regret it because it was the truth. And I'm always going to speak the truth. I love to be the bearer of bad news. And whatever direction the truth points me in, that's the direction I'm going to take it. And so I said, I'm never going to let this child become fat the way that you did to me. That's what I said to her, right? I said, I'm never going to let this child become fat like you let me get fat when I was young. And you could tell it cut her deep. It cut her very deeply. And she kind of stormed out of the room into the other room. And I don't like to let things go unresolved. That's my biggest. That's like I don't know if you could call that like my shortcoming or the shortcoming of other people who like refuse to stay and resolve issues. I flip-flop on this a little bit. Like, do all issues need to be resolved? Like, I am, like, obsessed with resolution and, like, every debate, every conversation. We need to, like, resolve everything down to the fucking letter of the law, right? So I follow her, of course. You know, about to ruin another birthday for somebody like I always do. Like, I've, you know, stack it on top of the pile of, like, Christmases I've ruined. Birthdays, holidays. I ruin every fucking event, right? I always have since I was a young boy. But if I can justify it, then I won't apologize. But if I'm in the wrong, I'm in the wrong, you know. You know, I like to think I'll be the bigger person, and I'll admit, you know, sorry I ruined your birthday, whatever. And so, yeah, I follow her into the other room. And a conversation ensues. She says, you know, you always bring that up, like you're kind of harboring some resentment there about, you know, how I was, and you just think I'm a shit mom and this and that. And I said, no, I don't think that, and I'm not claiming that. However, you didn't do a good job at, you know, maximizing our health. I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but, like, you know, you didn't do a really good job at, like, meeting our dietary needs when we were young. You know, you sent us to school with fucking wagon wheels and fruit by the foot every day, and we were eating, like, marshmallow s'more Pop-Tarts with fucking sauce on them and chocolate sauce every morning before school. And I'm like, I said, I will never, ever let my kid be fat like you let me. And I told her, you know, she's like, how did I let you get fat? You just want to blame me. And I'm like, well, who else do you blame? Like, I was, like, fat in 5th grade, so I was fucking 9 or 10 or whatever, like, 10, 11. Like, as soon as I hit puberty, I started, like, getting fat, and I'm like, I'm like, people know more now than they used to. I'm trying to give her every benefit of the doubt. I'm like, you know, people didn't have access to the internet back then. This wasn't necessarily common knowledge. Like, I'm trying to give her every out. Trying to make excuses, like, on her behalf, because I don't want to sit there and, like, mentally torment the woman. Like, that's not my goal. But I'm not going to sit there in the same vein and let you totally dodge or shift accountability. Like, having a fat kid is being an abusive parent. Fucking period, right? And I'm like, I should have never been allowed to sit in my bedroom all day long with access to a fucking jumbo box, a fucking cardboard box full of frozen freezies, and eat 20 or 30 of them in a fucking day. That's every day in the summer. I would sit there and eat like fucking 2 dozen of these things. I'm like, I should have never been allowed to do that. And she goes, well, I never bought you all of that. And I go, where did I get it from? I didn't go in the store and steal, and I didn't work a job. So where did I get that? She's like, I think, you know, you just did what you wanted to. A lot of the times you just did what you wanted to. And I'm like, either way you want to try to twist this, right? You either think that a child is like a qualified agent responsible for making their own life decisions, or you don't. You can't cherry pick it. You can't be like, well, my fucking 10-year-old just has a will of their own, they're just gonna get the slop no matter what, and who am I can't stop them, they're just, their will is too strong, they're just too skilled at acquiring the slop. But then it's like, they don't apply it to other things. Like if I was working a job, right, in this country, then they would say, it violates like child labor laws. Even if I wanted to do it, they would say, oh, that violates child labor laws. Or if I wanted to engage in sexual activity, they'd say, it was statutory grapes. Or if I, etc., I wanted to like drive a car, they would say, you're not qualified. Even if I was big enough to reach the pedal and see over the dash, they would say, oh, you're not like mentally mature enough or whatever. But somehow when it came to like accessing all this slop to the point where I was like ballooned up, and it really affected my social life. And it does tie into like a broader conversation about the negligence of my mother in raising me when because part of the whole reason why I did get fat, it wasn't just attributable to the slop, but it was also that I began taking Concerta and Ritalin in very large doses that she allowed a doctor to prescribe to me. And for some reason that made me gain weight. Most people it has the inverse effect, but on me it made me balloon up and gain a lot of weight. And my mom was like, well, you probably went out and used whatever money I gave you to buy all that crap. And I'm like, okay, well then explain the lunch bag with the peanut butter and jam on the Wonder Bread sandwich and the fruit roll-ups and this and that, all the crap you'd send me to school with, the high glycemic diet. She said, what's wrong with that? It's a sandwich. Like boomers they unironically will almost argue that like potato chips are healthy because it's a potato, and that's healthy because it's like a vegetable or whatever. Like the amount of mental gymnastics they'll do. We're going to get into that in a minute as this video goes on, but she's like, what's wrong with that? Like, it's almost like they'll say, oh, fruit by the foot. Well, it's fruit. You know what I mean? Fruit roll up, that's fruit. It's part of the pyramid, you got to have that. It's just as good as an apple. And so whatever, right? I didn't even want to have this conversation, but she kept ignoring it too. She had one headphone in. She was acting like a child. She was like, okay, yeah, I hear you. I don't agree, but I hear you. Okay, whatever. Being very dismissive to the point where I had to like confront her head on. I was like, put your fucking phone down and like listen to me right now, She's like, what do you want me to do? What can I do? You blame me for everything. I'm okay. I admit it. I'm just a shit mom. And I'm like, bro, nobody's even saying that. Like, all I want you to do is just say, yeah, I was ignorant. I didn't know any better. I'm not a dietitian. We didn't have the internet back then. I trusted the food pyramid. I trusted the experts when I shouldn't have. And that's it. I'm very sorry that, you got fat and you didn't, your social life suffered as a result. And just say that. And then that's it. Like, nobody can really fault a person when they're already admitting fault and just being honest about the situation. But even when she goes, fine, okay, yeah, I fucked up and I fucked up a lot of things. Again, trying to like kitchen sink everything into it, right? Trying to like, it's hard to explain, man. My mother is like the female method of war. She's like the General Patton of like the female method of war. She's just like such a good strategist of the FMAO. I can't even explain how It's like Stonewall Jackson or something. Like, it's almost hard to even like capture it in language so I can describe it here in this video. But she'll concede and she'll admit fault for something, but then in the very next breath, she will admit fault for everything. And then it sort of like trivializes the actual point you were making. Because she's just saying, I did a lot of stuff wrong. And it's like, I don't care about that right now, though. I'm not like putting your whole character on trial. I'm talking about a very specific thing. Talking about something very, very specific. And you're acting as though I'm like, this is some kind of like inquisition or whatever. And you're flattening the curve by doing that. I'm like, that's not a real apology. And I'm not browbeating you to get an apology. You should want to apologize. Like, it's not like I should have to like bend your arm and hold you down to like make you apologize under duress. Then it's not an apology. You should want to apologize. Otherwise, like, it doesn't count. The authenticity is like the whole point of an apology. It has to be genuine and authentic. It can't be like coerced, or else it doesn't qualify as a real apology. And I go, yeah, you apologized, but then you start saying, oh, well, I did a lot of stuff wrong, and, you know, I wasn't perfect. You know, I'd like to see how you do as a parent. You won't be perfect either. Using this kind of like Christian, you know, let he who cast the first stone be without sin type crap. It's funny, you know, they're not Christians. They will never say they're not Christians. They still somewhat espouse it if directly asked. But they're not Christians. They don't practice it in any way. They don't pay it any mind. But it's funny how naturally boomers will just immediately invoke like Christian type defenses for bad behavior. Like, oh, well, I did this thing, but I did a lot of bad things, and you've done a lot of bad things. That's not an apology. But then when I point that out, she'll turn around and say, I just did apologize. I just said I'm sorry. I'm like, yeah, but you embedded the apology in like this bigger victimhood fucking ~�㭍�㭍𝘭, which delegitimated the apology. And now you're acting like I'm nitpicking the apology. I'm being like weird and pedantic, and then she'll gaslight me. Oh, yeah, I said it, and it's not the way you wanted me to say it. But I did, like, they'll start doing this, right? You can never pin them down. They're like jelly. You just can't nail them to the wall. And, she goes to me, oh, well, if that's the case, then peanut butter was so bad, right? When I put it in your lunch when you guys were kids, you know, I put the Skippy in your lunch with the Wonder Bread. And how come you still eat it now? Sometimes you go in the kitchen and just eat it with a spoon. And I'm like, yeah, when I eat it now, it's a bad decision. It's a bad decision. But the thing is, I'm an adult now, number one. So the whole point is about like a kid, and not that the fact that a kid doesn't have agency. So if they're fat, it can't be their fault. Because if it is their fault, then then this implies that they have some kind of agentive capacity that you then have to extend to, like, you know, being able to consent to different things, being able to work a job, being able to like drive a car, like I've mentioned already. So you're probably not willing to bite the bullet on that, so you have to be consistent. And I said, you know, let's say somebody's parents fed them alcohol when they were 11 years old. And you say, you know, you shouldn't have done that. You should have never gave me alcohol as a kid. It fucked up my life. It wasn't good for me. It fucked up my growth and my body, everything like this, right? And then they turn around and say, oh yeah? Well, then why do you still drink all the time every weekend? Meanwhile, you're like 30 years old, right? And I'm like, that's just not a good argument. Like, somebody could be an alcoholic, but still say it's bad to drink alcohol. Or I could still be fat. I am still fucking fat to this day. It's a little bit of a different case because I have 190 pounds of pure lean muscle mass under my fat. But nevertheless, I'm still fat and I still eat the same fucking crap. But I also don't twist reality to make it okay. I say it's not okay that I do that. And I do try at times to experiment with different diets to try to mitigate it and all of these things. I recognize it as a problem, whereas you contort reality in your mind to make it seem like, applesauce is good for you and fucking Cheese Whiz is good for you because it's a dairy product or whatever, right? I don't engage in that type of self-deception or whatever. That's a big difference. I still engage in the activity, but I'm not self-deceived about it as I'm doing it. But at the end of the day, you know what I mean? She goes, oh, it's 30 years later. What do you want me to do? It's what's done is done. And I said, well, first of all, just don't perpetuate it onto me as a parent. I'm sure I'll make my own mistakes, but they're not going to be the same as the mistakes you made with me. The whole reason, I didn't tell her this, but the whole reason I ever wanted kids was to rectify a few particular fuck-ups that were made with me. I felt that in a weird kind of transcendental way I could, rectify them in myself by doing better, I guess, while being on the other end of it. But I'm sure that'll have, unintended consequences that I don't anticipate. And, every kid ends up fucked up because the world's fucked up. You don't make it through this life without some kind of anguish and some type of war wounds, but I just don't want them to be the same war wounds that I wear. So, at the end of the day, though, I went downstairs and I thought about it for a few minutes or, 20 minutes, whatever. I went downstairs and took a shit. And I came upstairs and I gave my mom a kiss, which I don't usually do. I probably give her a kiss once a year. Told her I love her because these people literally can't get outside of their way of thinking to consider that it may have been wrong. They are children. Boomers themselves are children, just like I was a child when I was the victim of 𝘋𝘭𝘭𝘦𝘤𝘵. They are children their whole lives. They can't. Their virtue is good. At least I won't speak to boomers in general, but they're not malevolent. They have good virtue. They do they commit or engage in bad actions in service of good virtue, what they feel to be right. I told my mother, she said, what about all those dinners I cooked with the nice salads, this chicken Caesar salads and everything? And she did. She cooked every night. A lot of it was from a box. Sometimes it was from scratch, but it's not like she was a shit mom. She really wasn't. I hear some of the stories from the fucking cells in this space who listen to my stuff. People like Dustin Clay and, Wolf Slumbers and these guys. I hear stories about their parents and I'm like, man, fuck. that is just savagery, like total fucking savagery toward your kin, your offsprings. It's unimaginable. I never got like treated maliciously by my parents. I was never hated by them. Like, my parents very much did everything they did, the good and the bad, in service of what they thought was like good virtue. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of that stuff retarded me and severely hindered my development mentally, physically, socially, emotionally. And sometimes all you want to hear is just somebody say, you know what? I was wrong. I didn't know any better. I didn't think any better. I was busy all the time working, on the rat race. In hindsight, I regret it. If I knew then what I knew now, things would have been different, but I don't. We can't change the past. We shouldn't dwell in it. Learn from it. Don't repeat it. If somebody just says that, there's nothing, you can't continue to like harbor animosity and try, you know what I mean? But they never can say that, because that's too much an admission that's too much an admission of like fault for them. They will not ever, they'll do everything but. They'll say, well, a lot of kids had nothing to eat and it could have been a lot worse. And they'll just say stuff like that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I'm sorry for everything. Or they'll say, I'm sorry you feel that way. They'll never just say, they'll never just say the line that I quoted a moment ago, like, sorry, I knew not what I did, and that's it. I can't change it. But they're always going to be this way, right? And they don't actually see why it's unacceptable, so you have to kind of be the bigger person. If you want to be. I mean, I'm not telling you you can fucking resent your parents forever and curse them to the grave, and you can say, fuck you, go fuck yourself. But I am just a little bit more compassionate, and I just see, you know what? Yeah, you really don't understand, like, my ethics. You really don't understand my philosophy. You can't understand it. It runs so counter to your own that they're non-overlapping, and you can't expand your mind enough at your age to get inside my head and at least acknowledge that I think this way and that it is a sound rationale behind it. So, I don't know what else to say. I left it on a good note because I know my family's going to dissolve in the next few years, and I don't want these to be like the memories of, having a shit birthday that got ruined by an argument about 𝘋𝘭𝘭𝘦𝘤𝘭 or whatever. It's very, very, very sad. It's very, very sad that is what we've been reduced to in the current whatever, in the current day and time. I just, I had to take a bit of an overhead view and be like, look, man, this person's just at an impasse. They don't understand. And they're not big enough to apologize, but they don't mean harm. They cause harm, but they don't mean harm. And they're not capable of separating the two things. And I can either just say, fuck you, and they'll never understand that. They would never understand why, if I did just decide to say fuck you, why I was being so mean to them. They would never understand the point. They don't understand what's at stake in the dispute in the first place. And so I just have to I just give her a hug and tell her, I love you. And it's like dealing with a child. Dismal days indeed.